Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, your number one podcast for all things Assassin's Creed. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at how Assassin's Creed can move forward in the RPG genre. But to keep moving forward, we have to look back. And by looking back, we're going to look at the characteristics that made Assassin's Creed, and how they can influence the games going forward. We have seen in the recent game Valhalla, they have taken a look back at games like Assassin's Creed 1, and they've tried to mirror how certain Templar agents were set up to give you a mimic vibe of what it was like playing more games. This was a great approach, in my opinion. It kind of really made the game more immersive and made it link back up to Assassin's Creed 1 in the past, but I do believe there is more they can do. So in this episode, we are going to be joined by Ikraik from the Assassin's Creed Stud server.
Hello there, and it's great to be back again. Third time in a row, right? Is it the third time? Not in a row, but yeah, it's the third time, so third time's the charm.
Yeah, it's kind of a compulsory. Once you're on this show once, you have to come back.
Uh-huh.
I kind of don't know if I ever managed to get someone from the Ubisoft team onto this show. I don't know how they'll take me saying to them, you can come back when you want, because I might scare them off.
They'll be happy to join in. I think once they are opening up to you, then yeah, it'll be cool.
It's Magnus Braun who I want on next. I really want to talk to him about being Harvey.
Ooh.
Well, Odin. I have questions. How did it feel to be Odin and Eivor at the same time? Spoiler.
Ooh. I think we crossed the spoiler mark, except for you, but I think we all crossed the spoiler mark.
Hey, I'm sitting on 100 hours, people. 100 hours. I've got 2 arcs left. I'm getting there. But this is not what we're talking about. I promise we will be discussing Valhalla in the future. I have some episodes packed full of spoilers, breakdowns, and some juicy little lore bits that we've discovered. But primarily today is a retrospective look at the old games and how we can influence RPG going forward.
Right. So as we all know that RPG is like now the most popular genre, and Ubisoft have tried to adapt. The reason why I'm saying tried, because it is usually, and they would usually add elements which was reflected in the previous games, and we see that becoming more and more pronounced to what is called the Witcher style, or the combat, or the action RPG genre. And let us look through a retrospective by looking through the RPG system and see where Ubisoft can improve by looking back. So, shall we begin? Or because it's going to be a long day. So.
It is. I just want to kind of say that I don't actually like, and I know why people say it, but I've never understood why people compare big RPGs these days to The Witcher 3. Like, I understand The Witcher 3 was really big for its time, it was a very innovative RPG, but I really just don't like that a lot of people compare new big open world RPGs as Witcher clones. If that makes
that's
sense.
Because let's take because it comes with how it is set up, right? Like, for example, if you look at the story and setting, Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Odyssey or Origins is set somewhat at the time of a medieval era. Not proper medieval for Origins and Odyssey, but especially for Valhalla, it is definitely the medieval era where people have that fantasy for. Witcher 3 was in the medieval setting. Then you have a combat system which is more like the Origins combat style, which is derived from the Witcher 3 formula again. Not derived. There were other games that already did this before, like, for example, JRPGs on action-based JRPGs. But it was there, like, and we see that often. Then what else do we have? The dialogue options, which was there in Witcher 3, happened over there. So obviously we can see that heavy comparison with the RPG system and with Witcher 3.
Yeah, I can understand. Sorry, my microphone just cut out, so I don't know how that's going to affect the sound, people. So I do apologize about that.
No, it is. I can hear you quite clearly, so it's fine. I did hear an echo of myself, but that's fine.
Yeah, that's because my headphones popped out and I was struggling to get back in. So that's going to be fun to edit, people. It's going to be very difficult to edit.
Yeah. Now you know
I'll figure
which is
something
the
out.
pure edit version, a non-edited version. Right. Okay, we can move forward, or is it something you want to talk about as well? Like, do you agree? Do you
Um,
agree that, like, why people feel that it is somewhat of a Witcher clone rather than it, even though it, like, most of it, it's not.
I can agree, but I just, as a personal person who's played a ton of RPGs, I can see that a lot of games before The Witcher 3 influenced The Witcher 3. So when a RPG that comes along that uses similar stuff to Witcher 3, they immediately jump to Witcher 3. I kind of sit there and
Yeah,
think, well, hang on, there's been hundreds of RPGs in the past that have done what The Witcher has done.
yeah,
We shouldn't just keep just saying it's a Witcher 3 clone because that does paint a negative light on the games,
exactly.
in my opinion.
But that's the thing, right? But the thing is, we see a lot of similarities, and it's becoming closer and closer. Like Valhalla is like the closest Assassin's Creed Witcher style I've ever seen, because mainly because of the setting and everything that combines with it. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Like, because we have a lot to talk about. I'm not lying. There's a lot. Oh
Yeah,
wow. Okay.
let's jump in.
Right. I think the first one that we usually hear about the RPG system is the story and setting. And I think Ubisoft has pretty much started on that, because we know what the first thing that we know about Assassin's Creed is about the story and the setting. So, yeah. What is your thoughts about this?
I really think the story and setting for Assassin's Creed has just never been bad.
Yeah,
Like I know I could be wrong, but I really just think the story and settings for Assassin's Creed has always hit the nail on the head.
always.
Black
Yes.
Black Flag was fantastic. I know Odyssey gets a lot of backlash because of how big it was, but the story behind Cassandra is fantastic.
The
I'm
Peloponnesian
will
War,
always defend
especially
it.
the Peloponnesian War, is
Yeah,
they like that's the thing. They took history as their playground in terms of setting and in terms of story, which is amazing, and I find it's still unique for the genre, and pretty sure they can still. I hope they move away from the Europe sector and the American sector, but I hope the best for them, like because it is still unexplored area, to be fair. Like, you still have the Incas, the Indians, the Australians. What else do you have? The Russians, the Chinese. These are all either are linked as a part of a comic, but it's not something that we explore in depth. And I would love to see Assassin's Creed move forward, probably away from the Northern Hemisphere.
I would agree. I think there's a lot of settings to explore, and there's a lot of settings I've gone over in the past with time zones we want to see and we don't want to see. My only gripe that's going to be with Assassin's Creed moving forward is story.
Oh, that we
And
cannot we cannot handle that, unfortunately. Because we can't tell whether it will be continued in transmedia, or whether it will be uh, a cohesive situation like we see between Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla. So it's totally up to them. But all we can do is hope that they would nail it, as we would say.
yeah, and I think that what my concern is, though, and I am ready to be lynched for this, is I really hate talking about this because it gets me in so much trouble. It's effective. Assassin's Creed Origins to Valhalla has been the best in the stories than most of the old games. Just, well, other than Black Flag and Rogue. Just in terms of, I honestly believe that if they just stuck to what they did from 1 to 3, then Unity to Syndicate, which is just a basic Assassin versus Templar storyline, I do believe that it could eventually get mundane because there's not much you can really tell if you just stick to Assassins versus Templars. Black Flag was a bit more um, somebody who was an assassin. There's still it's in the background, but it's not in the forefront. This is someone discovering themselves and becoming the assassin. That was perfect. Rogue was someone leaving the Brotherhood, so it's there, but it's a new take on it. Origins is the birth of the Brotherhood, which I thought was fantastic. But when you look at like Syndicate, You really it's a basic Assassins vs Templar story, and either someone's gonna win, Templars are gonna lose. There's gonna be a piece of Eden involved.
Exactly.
How it
But
gets to that
that's the thing,
point,
because already Ubisoft has taken this path before. I mean, they have chosen to stay on the Assassin's Creed brand name. Like, if they wanted to go for a different storyline, and we have extensively talked about this, whether assassins need
yes,
to be in Assassin's Creed. Um, I'm keeping my word still true to this. Is that if they wanted to expand more, they could have gone for a different brand name and maintain in the same meta universe of Assassin's Creed, and then bring in the other stories that they want to bring out. But yeah, in terms of the mundaneness, I don't think that's the case, because mainly I feel there are many other stories that are still yet to be explored. Like, for example, you could be a female assassin. Like, I'm referring to Indian Brotherhood because I'm Indian myself. So I relate. I wish to see that happening. And if the Ubisoft was not able to deliver that, it does not make sense that, like, for example, you there is a lot of aspects of being an assassin in Indian history. Like, for example, the Vishakanya is a female assassin, and also is known to have a very strict diet of producing poisons from their bodies. This is something that Ubisoft could have explored or tried, but they have chosen to maintain a singular experience, which is what we have seen affecting a lot of us. You have a singular experience of a male assassin, and this comes under representation and issues that comes all along with it, and hence resulting in AC sisterhood movement. Is that they are not able to give a meaningful experience, and if they and they're restricting it themselves. The executors are restricting it themselves. So unless they have this full unrestricted freedom in order to make those experiences, then yeah, we might find some love back into assassins in Assassin's Creed.
yeah, and I've always agreed that the next game does need to have an assassin in the story, and I want more freedom. I think just my point has just always been, as someone who reads a ton of books and watches a ton of shows, if every season was just the same plot line but a different writing, it comes off a bit like, well, I've seen this before. Like, all the stories in Assassin's Creed are very unique and different,
Yeah.
but the premise of Assassins vs Templars all the way through, except for Rogue and Black Flag, was the same. It was just how they got to defeating the Templars was always different. How they got into the Assassins was different, but the whole premise of Assassins vs Templars was always
In
the
that
same.
case,
Assassins were gonna beat.
I know. But in that case, I would say AC1 did it the best, because they have taken the
Yes.
philosophy like really, really well. They said that like, you play as an assassin, but the very first thing that you do is that you are being forced into an animus to play as an assassin that we all had the mentality is that a person who kills. So definitely we're going to play as the bad guy, but we see a different perspective, because that's what it is. That's we seeing an alternate version of the reality, where we see Altair being conflicted with this as well. Like, when I'm not sure after which mission, but he conflicts himself, like saying that the Templars have the same vision as we do, so why do we kill them? And that shook Altair as a personality, and that gray area is something that Assassin's Creed should have explored. But with AC2 onwards, it became very black and white. Like, Templars are bad, assassins are good, and it just went black and white for as the series progressed on, until it went for Black Flag, where you hear this famous dialogue by Torres saying, "You wear your convictions well," when in his final breath, because that is what it meant. You have the principles of Creed and you adopt it. You understand why it's there, and that's the reason why people play the game. You need to see what are the different answers to the philosophies of the Creed can be brought in through words. And yeah, I can see how it can evolve even further, but I really, really hope that they switch it from the European setting because I think we have seen enough.
I agree. You hit the nail on the head, though. It's the grey area that I miss. It's the questioning of the creed, you know? It's the growth of the character into the creed, you know? Ezio grew really well into the character and he was a fantastic story, but all the way through his trilogy, it was just, like you said, black and white. Assassin's good, Templar's bad. I just miss the whole grey area, you know? I just want an assassin to kill a Templar and in a confession corridor, the the assassin feels conflicted because the ideologies of that Templar speak so true to them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Syndicate
It's that
almost did it well.
mystery.
Actually, Syndicate almost did it well. Like, for example, when you kill off each target, like when Jacob kills off each target, you see the mess that he caused, the chaos that he caused because of his actions. And that is something that I hope the series would have focused more on rather than the black and white character of Starik and his schemes, to be fair.
I agree. We want grey area. We want to question it. We want to be really badass assassins and unique settings, have fun, but have that undertone of us questioning our actions.
Exactly. So the consequences of our actions. But according to Wikipedia, obviously Wikipedia is our friend in times of these. In terms of story and setting, it also comes under characterization, which means dialogue options. Ooh, controversy. Declan, what do you think about dialogue choices?
Dialogue my dyslexia is forming up
It's
now.
fine.
Dialogue choices to me should only operate in one way. It's a way that I've argued since Odyssey, and it's a way that actually Valhalla seems to be doing, and that's where, and I'm following the Skyrim and the Fallout setting here, where you have a canonical response, which Eivor seems to always go for, but the other options are filler. So it's kind of saying you'll always get the canonical response. It's not going to change the endings, but you have a choice to learn more about that character. Do you want to talk to this character and go straight ahead for the mission, or do you want to know why he wants you to do that mission? And it's them choices that I think could work for more depth, more flavour, but there's always going to be one
Yeah,
canonical option that continues the story.
your voice got cut off in
Does
between.
that make sense? Did
Oh
I?
yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I actually, you want to make sure the canonical options to rephrase to what you just said, so that to cover up because for me your voice cut off in between. So to rephrase to what you want to say is that you want the canonical options to be the main focus, and any other dialogue options would be an optional choice or the more information gathering system of the dialogue options. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it's a system a lot of other RPGs use, and it's
Yeah,
a very good system because it doesn't like. I hate I hate playing a game and then get to a certain point where there's four different options and you start to yourself, okay, which is canon, which isn't canon. Right, quickly go to Google, find the canon option, and then realize, crap, I spoiled an ending.
exactly.
That is so devastating. But to be told, well, every choice you make is canon, but how you choose that canon option is up to you. So if you want your canon option to be blinded, so you don't know what you're doing, or do you want to learn why? I'm gonna use Leonardo from Assassin's Creed 2 as an example. I know it has no choices, but bear with me.
I know.
Like
I understand. I understand that.
uh, when Leonardo hands you your hidden blade in that famous cutscene where he threatens to cut off your finger because of the codex, let's just say you have the option to learn more about Leonardo and why he's helping you, or you could just take the hidden blades and train. You know,
Exactly.
the canon option is go and train, but we can learn more about Leonardo, why he wants to help Ezio, what's his motives, and maybe there could always be twists. So when you read back, like, if I did not do that dialogue option to learn more, I could have seen this coming all along. And it's a perfect narrative twist. If I just learned a little bit more, could have seen the seen the seeds of doubt and learnt myself.
Perfect. That is what exactly what Assassin's Creed needs to be. But unfortunately, going to a path where it is like your actions have consequences is something that needs to be avoided in terms of storytelling, especially with Assassin's Creed in mind, because you're going to relive a memory. But let me tell you something which I'm pretty sure not many of them would know is that there is a sort of like a dialogue option or sort of like a difference in your dialogues in Assassin's Creed 1. So when you play the missions in Assassin's Creed 1, and if you cover all the side missions, and then you go talk to your bureau leader, he would, at first, your bureau leader would say something like, hey, this is your target. And this would be the objectives that you need to know more about your target. Altair then says, no need, I have covered all that up. And then he explains what are the areas that he needs to cover and the openings of each areas. So this is, or if you have not done that, then the bureau leader would then help Altair saying that, hey, go there and give you an objective to do it. So which is something that Assassin's Creed always had. They had a dialogue, sort of like a choice, but it was not to a point where it was canonically disastrous, as we've seen with Odyssey, which is something that we saw its effect pretty heavily. So, yeah.
But as Darby did explain in tweet as well, it is technically, in theory, correct to say that everyone who's played Assassin's Creed from the beginning up till, we'll say Origins, because it will cover anything, up till Origins, only the narrative has been canon. Your actions have
Yeah,
never been canon,
exactly.
because you cannot force someone to have the exact same gameplay as someone else. So technically, everyone's version of Assassin's Creed hasn't been canon.
Exactly.
Only the narrative has been canon. So it's unique to say that the narrative is canon, and I love that the narrative has been canon, but you cannot argue that Assassin's Creed has always been 100% linear,
Yep,
in the sense of everyone's gameplay will always be different.
exactly.
So choices are always made that don't affect narrative, which is what I prefer.
But yeah, we see that with Darby's tweet as well, where he mentions that, like, for example, if you go to a restricted area, you could either not kill the target and progress through the mission and complete it, or you could just kill everyone on plain sight and progress through the mission regardless. Both are valid options according to the player, but to the animus, it is considered as a resync. So basically, you resync to the point where Ezio or Altair reaches to that point, and the story progresses. So usually in a normal game, killing one person or killing 50% or more, or a whole army, would give devastating results, to be fair. And we don't see that being reflected because that's how this narrative system is. And it is amazing that right now we have members like Darby who's able to maintain the consistency. And I hope they maintain the consistency moving forward.
And I think if it was staying with consistency, I kind of prefer it in Origins and Valhalla. I didn't like it not being Odyssey. Desynchronizing civilians is just something so satisfying that
Yeah.
trying to play, like, kill some guards for fun, you bored, let's go kill 20 guards, and then you get that desync because you killed civilians. It kind of does make you go, oh, I should have been more careful. And surprisingly, I enjoy that.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just like, okay, I shouldn't have gone in and just blown everything up. I
Because
should have been more strategic.
because you have that feeling, because even though it's a restriction produced by the game designers, you have that restriction saying that, hey, you're not supposed to do that. Eivor did not do that. So what you're doing is a canon. But if Cassandra killed half of Greece, and it could be civilians, children, or whatever, she could get away with it, which does not link you to it because it's not immersive. Because you could be a monster or you could be a gentle soul, and both are canon.
Whereas in Valhalla, you do get that
Yeah.
distinctive, what I'm killing people for what I need to kill. I'm not killing them for pretty fun. So I have learnt my lesson of setting up traps and watching hundreds of civilians die because I was trying to get two people for fun, and then realizing, you know what, next time I'm going to be more stealthy and figure
It
something out because
desynchronized
I'm
you.
not getting
Yeah,
desynced.
you're desynced. Yep, fair enough. So next up on the objective, or if you want to finish it off.
No, I want to jump on the next detective. I'm enjoying
Ooh,
this chat.
this is brilliant because again, Wikipedia is helping us. So yeah, next one is explorations and quest. I think Assassin's Creed doing a pretty well job, a good job of it, except with the time period. I would say I think it's mainly due with the open world formula, but again, it could be tweaked to be somewhat smaller, shorter, and more not as grindy. But yeah, that's what I feel. But so far, they have been doing pretty well. A good job of engaging players with quests and side quests and activities.
Um, for me, looking back on it, I feel Valhalla is the best game for exploration, purely on the premises I've discussed before in past episode. The way what the map is, when you look at all the other maps in Assassin's Creed, as I've done before this episode of research, they're all cluttered with random icons,
Yes.
and it was just so satisfying to have three icon systems: a white, blue, and gold, and to get to find out what it is, you have to go there, and it made me want to explore. You know, in the other games where it was like, I know there's a chest over there, and like in Unity, it was just a simple waypoint walk. It was like I was on a sat nav. You know what I mean? There was no exploration. I knew where a quest was by Blooming Notre Dame. I didn't explore the area. I just knew it was there, so I just walked to it. There
Yeah,
was no satisfaction of finding Notre
true,
Dame, if that
true.
makes sense.
I think with Unity, the thing is, unless you buy them, like I think it was there in the previous games, you buy the maps, then all the chests are revealed. This is more of a collector's thing. But I wish they did the collectibles a little bit more of a justice in Valhalla, in my opinion, because usually, like for example, even in AC2, you have this suffering 100 feathers to collect. But in the end, once you collect all of them, you have that satisfaction of the reason why you're collecting them makes much more sense. And that sort of completionist nature is encouraged, which is something that I really, really like, that the devs are making you engage into the world as much as you can as you move forward. But yeah, unfortunately, that completionist design has been going a little bit haywire in, especially with Odyssey, Origins, and Valhalla, which was also causing some players to burn out pretty quickly. For examples, like with Origins, your normal playtime, full playtime with all the side objectives, every single collectibles collected would be close to 80 hours or 90 hours, maximum 120 hours. Um, with Odyssey, it was about 160. And with Valhalla, right now, I'm clocking at 114 when I almost completed every single side objective. So, yeah, that is something Ubisoft needs to address is the size and the content of the game because it doesn't give you a meaningful experience to go for the side activities if you're willing to make their players spend that much time.
But as I'm going to explain in the future episode, no date yet, so I don't want to say too much. The issue I'm finding is Assassin's Creed has finally, and I knew it was going to happen, has hit what I class as a wall between casual and hardcore
Yep.
gamers. And this is going to sound, I'm not singling out, but it's become to a point now, every game has it. Do you put not enough in, so casual gamers that can spend, like me, I'm a full-time dad, I don't have a lot of time to game, can spend 2 hours a night and I'll get everything done in under 20 hours? Or do you fill it to the brim where you're spending a 60 quid for 200 hours and you may have 16 hours a day to game and you've done it in under a month? That's a satisfaction for them, but for a casual person like me, I'm clocking in at 100 hours in Valhalla, and the only reason I have 100% is Norway, and that took me 13 hours. And if you're doing the maths, 2 hours a night for 13 hours is about a whole week's worth of gaming. So it's just hitting a balance now. How do you make the game perfect for bang for your buck, and enough that hardcore gamers that will spend 16 hours a day has enough to do,
It's not.
whereas casual people don't have too much to do.
I don't think. I don't think mainly in that. Feel in terms of the narrative. Like for example, again, it goes back with the previous topic in terms of story. Is that sometimes when you do a main quest and then you go and explore the side quest, unless the side quest complements the main quest in a situation, you can feel the cohesion towards that side quest. But if it's too much to the point where it is constantly cluttered, you wouldn't find cohesion to the main quest, and the moment you come back to the main quest, you feel so out of place. This is what I was wanting to touch upon actually, but yeah, I understand what you're trying to go through. There are people who are super hardcore. They finish the game within 20 hours, and then they'll be like, there's not much I can do right now. And yeah, this is something that every game has to do well. In this aspect, Odyssey did pretty well. For example, you have your daily activities for the opals or whatever they're called. I can't say the full name of it. The Orshilum or whatever it is called. Um, you do those weekly quests, or you do the battles. These are repeatable events where you constantly try to get as much as you can. It's just mainly for grinding and XP boosting and stuff like that. But it needs to be enjoyable. If it is not enjoyable, and or if it's almost non-existent, then the players won't have enough to maintain their time there. This is what happened with the river raid situation, in my opinion, where it it was supposed to be that filler, but it didn't have enough to maintain as that filler.
I agree, but I haven't actually been able to play the River Raid because I'm still at a point now that by the time the first DLC comes out, I've probably only just finished the main game. So it looking at two different examples, mine and your point of view, for me, this game has too much to offer because I can only play 2 hours a night,
Exactly.
and if it took me 5 days just to complete Norway 100%, this was before they patched the Jotunheim, where you couldn't go back to Jotunheim, so I thought you had to do every region 100% to get the trophies. Um, 5 nights in one area is a lot,
Yeah,
and then when you look at someone who's like, it's so hard for me to avoid spoilers because everyone beat it. So everyone who's beaten it now, like, well, there's nothing to do. We're very boring, blah blah blah. It's like, I agree, but you've also got to take in consideration the players that are newly picking up the game or don't have a lot of time. They find this game so far too full,
exactly.
and you may think there's not enough in, and you may throw complaints on the internet that it's a rubbish game because there's not a lot to do. But to some people out there is too much to do, and
It's always
it's
that
a hard
balance. It's always
balance.
that balance that they need to maintain. I would say that they should have focused on that's what a less open worldish formula would work in that situation, and more, even if they add more maps like what they did with Valhalla, with Vinland, Jotunheim, and Asgard. If they keep doing that with the future games, then but with a smaller map, of course, a smaller map size, of course, then yeah, maybe that charm can come back where they can invest more time into these regions, these areas, as such.
I agree. I don't know what to expect, to be honest. I'm just happy just to play another Assassin's Creed.
I think a game that actually did this was Assassin's Creed 2. So in Assassin's Creed 2, you have Venice, Forli, where else? Monteriggioni, and where else? Rome was not there at the point. Where was it? Florence. Oh my god, how would I
Florence.
forget that? Okay, so four major maps that was like you constantly move back and forth based on whatever your synchronization level is or with the terms of the story. And it is such a different feeling, right? Like because you are going from one city to another. You're not even losing that experience. What you are missing, what you are actually having in the open world formula is that time taken to complete that. Now, the problem with that is between that one narrative point to another, you need to fill that empty space with side quests. This can lead to a clutter of side quests, which is what is affecting a lot of players, in my opinion. And that's why I wish that the open world formula is somewhat smaller so that the side quests can maintain within that area of focus.
I agree, but as we discussed in a previous episode, open world versus linear, there is a small chance that sometimes certain history cannot
Yeah.
be condensed, which is a bummer because it's nice. But I personally will say that even though I find Valhalla too full at time and I do struggle, I don't think Eivor's Sega would have worked in a smaller map.
Yeah, that's true. So that's the thing. It depends on the setting that they choose entirely. And that is what I say. Try to go away from the European sector. Because there's so many areas, right? Like, for example, the Incan myths, they used to be this huge civilization. Or, say, for example, in Indian civilization itself, if you take the British era, they covered almost whole of India. And you have these major areas where you could explore. It could be either a city based formula for AC2 or it could be an open world. Both works. But I hope it's not an open world because then there'll be a lot of empty spaces. But the major areas of conflict would be the major cities that the Britishers or the colonizers used to stay. That is the Mumbai, or also known as Bombay, Chennai, or also known as Madras. So these two areas is something that they could focus on. Um, but yeah, but is still a pipe dream. So let's hope that that somehow makes through.
Hopefully,
Hopefully,
it will. I strongly believe that Assassin's Creed has just got to. You've just got to play the waiting game. It's on sucks, I know, but when you're making a video game like Assassin's Creed, there is going to be so much history to pick from that at first it's going to be like, well, this sucks, but one day they might hit the area that you want.
exactly, because there are so many areas to touch in other history, and I feel like just maintaining within the like, for example, England has been featured twice. France is going to be featured twice again. Then you have, I mean, for example, Paris itself was twice in a row. Like like you have Unity and Valhalla with, uh, I think the only difference that I saw so far was from Black Flag, which was, but again, the enemies were almost the same. The colonial trade wars were the same. Then AC3 was somewhat unique in that aspect. AC2 to Brotherhood and Revelations were somewhat unique, but again, they were all towards the European sector. And obviously, if you maintain only a particular segments of that storyline, it wouldn't make sense. I wish they could branch out more southward and to give more diverse experiences. And if there is a diverse experience, there'll be more stories to tell.
I agree.
Okay, next up. I think we can go to the next topic, else we'd be constantly going on a wish list. So, next up is items and inventory. Oh boy, I need to take a water break, but by this time, you can tell your thoughts about the items and inventory system in Assassin's Creed so far and what you see in the older games that you like.
uh, Sorry about that. I'm trying to think. It's a hard one because I find infantry management and all that jazz difficult. Like, I find Assassin's Creed Odyssey's infant management and gear system and all that just so tremendously difficult to keep up with stats and all that. But I think Valhalla does it well. I just wish there was a dismantle option because I really hate junk filing up. But I really think Assassin's Creed's approach at the moment to the inventory management has actually been okay. It's not innovative. It's just very basic, but it's always had a clean and simple UI, which just makes it best. I just think I just don't want them to improve too much, where it's really in depth and not very very time consuming. I want to spend less time in the menu and more time in the game, and a more in depth inventory system, which has got like crafting inside the inventory, gear starts in the inventory, dismantling in the inventory, and whatnot, can actually lead to just more time in menus and less time in game, which would kind of suck, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I understand, and I feel that too. So again, as our topic is, we're going a retrospective. So in terms of items, we had this sort of an inventory system in the first game itself, but it was very very linear in how you're obtaining them. You didn't have a loot system to obtain it. You had a narrative implication. For example, in AC1, it was purely just that. Like there was no shopkeeper of any kind to gain new gear. You had to earn your gear through the missions, and once it is done, it is unlocked. But you did have an inventory of a sort where you could choose any of the blades or throwing knives or anything. It is for you, but you need to unlock it first. The second thing that you can notice is with AC2 is where you see the big shift in the paradigm with the RPG elements. Is the shopkeeper system, and it's still one of the best shopkeeper systems I've seen. In, for example, in Brotherhood, especially the investment system. I don't think it's there in consoles, but in PC it is amazing. Like you invest on risky areas and it gives you revenue back. So you're interacting with it. It's more like a gameplay feature now. But I'm sad that it's not there. It did go well with the AC3 system, but again, it went very much into trade rather than just a good return back. So Assassin's Creed could have done better instead of having this monetization issue, where it's like everything needs to have a money, but if you don't have money, then you can't get it. They could have gone for a barter system like what we had in the past. You trade some of your gear, or even if you want to trade some of your items to have that value and then get it back. If it exceeds or something, then you need to find a compromise. That sort of system worked well. Like you could see this with Kingdom Deliverance. It's like one of the RPG games out there that does have a coin system, but also has a barter system of some sorts. And yeah, but again, having that challenge is useful, but right now it's just very plain, and I don't. I feel like they need to give a little more thought into the inventory system.
I really don't like using this word, but I do kind of disagree a tiny bit, just on the premise of looking back at Unity. I think I did spend too much time in Unity in the inventory system, just trying to get my gear all matching so I can get the 5 stars, just so I can like work out my skill points. Spending all the time in inventory just to work out what weapon works best, what's going to complement my gear, kind of took away with just equip something and have fun. In Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I think I rarely ever used the inventory system. I had my weapons, and I think I only hunted for the gunblade, and that was the only thing I was ever bothered about. And once I got that, I equipped it and just never bothered with the inventory system again because I just didn't see the need to. I spent more time in game than not in a menu, but since Unity, I feel I'm spending more time in menu than I am in game, and adding more of a barter system to get more gear or the way it kind of works, I just kind of just
I
think
think this is very forced on opinion ways. I think because in terms of RPGs, so far I know is that when you make everything has an informed choice, right? Like for example, say you are playing a Dungeons and Characters session as a ranger or a mage. A mage wouldn't take a bow and arrow while a ranger does because they're efficient in it. I think that's the logistical challenge that Valhalla also needs to keep up in if they're going in the RPG route and trying to maintain a good RPG, is that they need to see how to find that good logistical challenge rather than just having a plain inventory system. I do agree there. Like, having a very detailed inventory system can also affect your experience. But again, it depends on how their system ties up in its entirety. So if they're able to give a decent challenge while at the same time not to seem extremely cluttered to the point where you have 700 pieces of the same gear, no, that is something that they need to focus it on. So yeah.
I've really enjoyed Unity Valhalla's inventory and gear system because even though I rarely pick up loot from the locations, I really like killing enemies, not seeing tons of little bubbles around for swords and shields and crud. I don't mind picking up stuff I can sell and buy ruins, but I've been playing the game for now 50 hours with the same assassin outfit and
Yep.
same two CX weapons, and that has meant the only time I ever go into the menu
Exactly.
system is to check my quests and put some passive skills. But to me, it's a perfect inventory system because if I do want to do more sniping, I will probably just switch out a predator bow for a hunting bow. But I wish it had the origins
Yeah.
wheel where you could go left for hunter, light, predator, and then right on the D-pad for a sword.
Which was there in
I want
Odyssey as well, which they did, which I didn't understand why they had to take a step back in that system. But yeah.
I I don't think it could fit with how Valhalla's mapping works. I don't think it could really fit, in my
Yeah.
opinion, on the
Yeah,
D-pad.
yeah. They
It'll
changed
get
it.
too
Yeah,
cluttered.
they changed it too much. What I can say is that, like, in RPGs, as far as I know, inventory does play a major role. So you have, like, for example, I'm taking Witcher 3 as an example. Please, the others don't flame me that why using Witcher 3 again. Witcher 3 had a challenge in your inventory. It had a limited size, and it also made sure that you don't clutter up way too much, because otherwise Geralt would be too heavy to move. You need to sell your gear. This was also there with Skyrim. Skyrim, if you had post your weight limit, you cannot carry the gear. You need to increase the weight otherwise, or have a backpack if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Have a backpack to ease your burden. So players would have to make an informed choice of having 700 pieces of gear or one piece of gear that you really need for your journey. So that sort of challenge is something that they need to focus. But let's see how they can improve on that. And I hope they do it more of an RPG approach where you make sure the players get an informed choice of what their inventory management should be. But as far as I know, it is way too open, and you can have like 6,000 pieces of stone for some reason in your pocket. And I don't find that very immersive. I feel that it's more of an immersive situation rather than a gameplay feature.
And then there's me on the flip side that I just
Don't want.
I would really get I would get bored if I had to play Valhalla and after probably spending half an hour running around having some fun and then to realize my character won't free run because I'm too heavy, so I have to now go find a shop, sell my gear, or discard it all. To me, in my immersive, I'd be like, I'm bored now. I don't really want to just bother with my inventory
I think
because
it would give that sense
uh,
of preparedness. Like, for example, like say that you go for a fight, you prepared your journey, right? So you only carry items that you really need. Rest, you can just leave it at the table, or at the chest or something, or at a bank if they had a bank. So just keep it there, and if you need it, just take it. Otherwise, just leave it there and take it when it's needed. So that's what I feel. But yeah, I see where you also mentioned where you feel like you wish you had the need of dismantling the loot that you gained. That is something I also wish Valhalla had done. But I think because of the unique nature of their loot system is what actually caused this issue in the first place. I think this was the drawback for the system, or the takeaway from the system, you could say. What I would expect though would be a system similar to Odyssey and Origins, have the same unique loot aspect, but you can dismantle them. The moment you dismantle them, for that particular quality of a gear, you need to either recraft it or re-find it again in the world.
I could live with that. I just think my biggest philosophy for any game, and it's why I literally gonna get burnt stick here, why I stopped playing The Witcher 3. The more time I can spend in the world and less time really juggling and venturing, making sure I'm super prepared, the better. When I played Skyrim, I will get lynched for this. I literally picked up nothing except essential items
Exactly.
because I did not want to be stuck in the middle of a dragon
Exactly.
fight and it's like you're
See,
overcumbered.
that
That
sort of a
annoys me.
mentality is your unique trait. But it could not be the same unique trait for anybody else. Say, for example, a tinkerer. A tinkerer is someone who would collect all loot, dismantle, use that loot to make something else. So that sort of system adds a more choice in a manner, which is essentially in an RPG. So if Assassin's Creed needs to go in that direction, they need to improve on this so that players can have that freedom of either being like one gear for life situation or improve on it.
So similar to Valhalla, where you can just have one gear for the entire game,
Yeah.
and you just have to try and find resources to
But Valhalla has
manage it.
700 gears that you could have too. Like, but it's unique, but it's still there. So that burns the immersion. Like, I can have like 700 pieces of wood or 7,000 pieces of wood in terms of Odyssey, and yet I wouldn't be facing that consequence of having that much items on me. So that is something that Valhalla needs to, or not Valhalla, or the future Assassin's Creed game needs to focus on for that sense of immersion and improve on that.
I can understand that.
Right. Oh, next one. I'm pretty sure you're going to take a break for this one at least. It is character actions and abilities.
Ooh, I like this one.
Oh, you want to start off? Or.
Yeah, we'll do this one. We can't take breaks. It's all one take. These episodes.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. So now we have character actions and abilities. So we saw that huge shift again with how the game was in the past. Usually, your actions or your abilities, skills obtained, were pretty much fixed in your narrative storyline. So whether you get your first sword or you get your first gear, what is your final gear supposed to look like? All those had an impact towards the end too, even in terms of abilities. Like for example, in Assassin's Creed 2, you didn't learn how to do the long jump until you learned it from Rosa in Fior, or was that Venice? Yeah, I think it was Venice, where you will learn the ability to climb higher. So that is something that players need to focus more on. RPG games need to focus more on a more variety of that. But with the way how Valhalla is going forward is super cluttered, they need to make it very linear and, as you mentioned, less time in the main menu of abilities.
I think for me, Unity, I didn't mind, but I really just hated picking out
Mhm.
skills. It was Origins that kind of made me fall in love with an Assassin's Creed skill tree because you didn't. It, the character was always a single character. Every ability was passive. They were all going to connect, but you could start off going in one direction first to build your character. But at the end, you're going to have this one character, and in my eyes, it made a really immersive character progression because this is Bayek learning, evolving. He's now got sleep darts because he's learned it, and it kind of in my head makes this immersion that this is Bayek growing as a warrior. In Odyssey, I got flustered with trying to find build guides and what's the best build for this, what's the best build for boss
Exactly.
fights, and that takes away an immersion level. Cassandra is no longer a mercenary that's learning these abilities, she's now just a mercenary that we all have to make copy and pasted off a YouTube build, which sucks. I don't mind Valhalla's because Valhalla to me is in the similar vein as Origins. Everything can be achieved, and most of it is passive abilities that just can be ignored or be used. And to be honest, I kind of just spend two skill points, leave the menu, and I don't really feel like I have to go into YouTube and find build guides because this is AWOL learning. You know, I started off till power 270, I think I told
Mm-hmm.
you, of just going Raven and Wolf. That was AVOR becoming more focused on stealth and ranging, and now I'm investing into the bear tree, which I'm not really too interested about, so I just let the fates decide for me.
Exactly.
But it to me it felt fine because I didn't have to really worry about what skill I'm
Mhm.
buying because eventually I'm going to get them all, so it's just fine.
Right. So that's the thing. Because of this aspect, you see where Assassin's Creed itself is being restricted, and cannot fully go for the RPG formula. Sorry for going more closer to the mic. So with Assassin's Creed, uh, it is restricted. It has its certain rules to follow because of its prehistoric lore that it has. Why I'm saying prehistoric is because it is what, how many years right now? More than 20,
14.
14 years. My God.
Yeah.
14 years of one storyline with obviously would have to have some sort of basis in moving forward. So which is why you see a lot of conflict between the old fans and the new fans alike, because old fans loved that old system, new fans did not as much and preferred the newer systems. So in that aspect, having an RPG system preferred them more. So having that full variety control of your character is a feeling that many people wish Assassin's Creed had, and when they finally had it, it didn't make sense. So Assassin's Creed needs to focus on how to balance this equivalently. What your approach said was pretty great too. Like for example, you start off in Origins where you work yourself to build as a warrior and towards the end become the assassin that he is canonically supposed to be. This is a better approach, and this is something that Ubisoft should focus on with the future build. So what they could do is that make the leveling or the obtaining of such abilities tougher, unlike in Valhalla, where you can get skill points just by doing stones or side activities even without leveling up, which I feel is not does not have that meaningful experience. So they could go for a Skyrim type of thing where you have an experience based or training based leveling system where you have how do I say this? Like for example, say you use stealth more often, you increase your stealth capabilities because you use stealth, and that could be a much better way of overrounding your character rather than just not using it at all, and have that would also give you a much more meaningful overall experience rather than just either going like a fixed route or having only a player choice given completely to you like in Skyrim or any other game.
So, in theory, I don't know if I'm grasping at straws. A valid idea would be, and imagining the tree system that Skyrim uses with the weird branches, but imagine having an Assassin's Creed game where there's three paths: combat, stealth, range.
Hmm.
Because I really think that's fine. Where you can, in theory, get every single one if you want,
Yeah,
but if you focus mainly on stealth, you can put all your points into stealth to get tons of passes for stealth. If you did both stealth and combat, you could put all your abilities into combat and stealth. As long as it doesn't become a copy and paste build where I have to go into YouTube and build, I think that system could work because you're getting the experience for doing it. You know, you're stealthy and your hidden blades, and you can then put your skill points into a passive
yeah,
tree. And if you want to learn more abilities, use a similar system to Valhalla,
yeah,
but instead of finding it in the wild, maybe if you're an assassin, get training.
exactly. That would work.
So
Like this is what Star Wars the Fallen, no, the Old Republic, Star Wars the Old Republic, what they did was you can gain you have a leveling system, but after a particular point you need to train. So what Valhalla or future Assassin's Creed games can do is that do a mixture of Skyrim and the Old Republic formula, where, as you mentioned, you level up doing what you do. And then after reaching that threshold, instead of investing into skill points or stuff like that, they can go and train it from mentors or something like that, and then improve it from there onwards. So that is something that would be very, very interesting to see them implement. But again, this could affect the open world experience. So they should be very careful on how they're proceeding with that.
I think how it could work really well, in my opinion, is if we had a game which I hope is an assassin one, we actually an assassin. If you even if it's an open world, we're going to use Ravensthorpe and Haytham for this one. Even if it's open world, you can go back to, let's say Ava goes back to Haytham and talks to him, and he says,
Oh yeah,
"I
with the
found these."
settlement. Yeah, with the settlement system, it could work.
Yeah,
So at least that way, I can get more interactions with Haytham. Oh man, I wish this was there in Valhalla now. God damn it.
yeah. But like, imagine going to Haytham and imagine the combat ring from Assassin's Creed One,
Mhm.
where you do little tutorials and you learn skills. So imagine going to Haytham and him saying, "Look, I found prototypes for two hidden blade for how to double assassinate someone," and you have to practice that with him. So he teaches you on dummies, and you learn how to do it,
Exactly.
and then that's now an ability you unlock. So when you go out in the open world, you can like do it in real life, and you get bonuses onto a skill tree for doing the stealth. But you've learned it just how Assassin's Creed One. You learn how to counter and to
You know
use
what?
combat
This system
from the
was
ring.
there in Assassin's Creed 2. This exact system, except
Yes,
there was not much of a leveling system where you could stab 50 people and then you learn how to double assassinate. No, it's more of you collect the codex pages, the special unlock conditions, which could work like real wonders too. And I really hope Ubisoft this could actually work in an Assassin's Creed setting. So I really hope that they focus more on this then. Yeah.
even with the hidden bureaus in Valhalla, you could, for example, take a codex back to him and how you think of like, oh, this is a skill for as he did in the very first one of the first missions. This is a skill for a leap of faith. It's a very traditional technique. I can show it to you, and then you show it, you learn it, it's unlocked.
Yeah.
It's a good progressive because it gives you more interactions. It's a permanent skill
Unlike
you've
just like reading
unlocked.
a book and then like, ooh, I can now call animals out of nowhere.
Well, to be honest, the Called Animal one has that weird quest where you rescue a dog, rescue the
Yeah.
wolves. So to me, it kind of think like you've got that bond with the wolves, you whistle on the wolves, like yeah, and kind of fight for you. But learning, I do think the learning book is a valid option because people learn books, learn skills normally. So
But yeah, without any practice, I think without any practice is the immersion less factor there.
yeah, so a system where, in my opinion, as long as a skills tree system can be completely completed, like I could play the game all the way to end game and have every skill in the game unlocked, like in Origins and Valhalla, that's fine. But if you're gonna start forcing me to do what I had to do in Odyssey and read on
Yep.
builds, learn what skills work for what
It
build,
could not work. It
that's
could,
when I'm
yeah,
put
that
off.
would put off a lot of players, including me. I'm with you on that front, like really. So yeah, so we saw how this could work then. So yes, Ubisoft, if you're listening to this podcast, please follow this. Okay.
Hire me.
Hire
I'll teach you
us.
some
Hire
skills.
us. We're good game designers, even though we are not experienced or have any games under our belt. But please, okay, right. Oh, that's interesting. The very next thing that we have is experience and levels as a characteristic.
Oh, we've covered
Yeah,
that.
we covered that. But they also mentioned character creation. Oof.
No,
Yeah, that's definitely not working with Assassin's Creed. So we saw with Assassin's Creed, right? Like how it adapted most of the RPG formulas, but at the same time, it cannot be a full true RPG. That is its fate, unfortunately.
which isn't a
Yeah,
problem because there is a sub genre of RPG called action RPG, which is normally a set character.
yeah,
Not every RPG has to have character
exactly,
creation. I just think certain RPGs like Horizon Zero Dawn, that is an action RPG,
exactly.
but it would never have worked if Ava was character generated.
Aloy.
It works because
Aloy.
a Aloy, sorry people, it works because Aloy is that fixed character that we can feel, we can get to know, we can feel her emotions, her love, her story, and that's what drives it home. And Assassin's Creed needs to stick to that because playing as female Ava all the way through Assassin's Creed just kind of showed me how single characters need to stay, including single female characters need to stay. We don't need choice.
Yeah. Uh,
It just
yeah.
works
The thing
perfectly.
is, when I played Odyssey, and I felt this a lot, was that like because I read the book later on, the Odyssey novel, is that Cassandra in the novel, w- she suffered so much for being a female Mystios, and her struggle was real, but you don't see that in game. You really don't. And that sort of experience is what we are also there to see as well and empathize with. I've mentioned this recently in my tweet today because apparently people are still divided on the topic of why can't we not divided as in mainly we want single protagonists, but they were like maybe choice is not a bad thing, and I'm like no, we never had that experience. I'm a male, we both are males, and we both never we couldn't understand how they could have felt, right? Because we are not females ourselves. So that experience of a female playing that is valid, even regardless of representation, etc. That experience is something that we have not faced, and to face that in a video game because you're gonna play as them makes a huge difference. And yeah, and that brings a whole different meaning of experience, and that is something Ubisoft should definitely include on in their future games and have a single protagonist and have full dedicated love towards it.
Uh, Last thing I will say on the character bit, I generally believe how the animus choice works in Valhalla. They did give the voice actor for Ava a lot of
Hmm.
room to give Ava such emotion, such depth, such anger that I actually have never looked at the game and thought, you know what, I don't think this character is very much empathizing. I just kind of look at female and go, wow, this is an amazing character design, amazing voice acting, and I have felt the emotions that she's felt all the way through the game.
But yeah,
I just, I just think it kind of hinders the fact that I had to choose between male and female
exactly.
because
He's not even
finding out
he's
who
not even canon. Like, how do you feel like towards the end you chose Harvey and he's not canon at all? Like, he's not even canon. And the way how they market it is that you chose any assassin, and then and then towards the end they're like, hey, there is a canon option too, haha. But still, choosing both of them still works. And like, what the heck? That's still not a full
uh,
experience. So yeah,
speaking from my heart and being honest, I could never get fully into Avar until I did Asgard. And the reason for this, and I will be generally honest, is I was always expecting me to be kicked out and replay as male Avar. But as soon as I hit Asgard and realized that Odin, which is a spoiler, is male Avar, I looked back at the game and thought, why does this have to be a
exactly.
choice? This should have been a set from the beginning. It was such impactful for Eivor to wake up in the eyes of Odin from mythology, and I don't know the reasons because I've not played the game, so nobody say, but to wake up in the eyes of Odin and to feel his emotions and then go back to Eivor who has to then juggle her own emotions with somebody else's was just more meaningful than just picking a character,
Exactly.
if that makes
And
sense.
just imagine,
It just had
and also there
impact.
is a cost factor I feel into this because not only you have to do one line for a female, and already the production mocap would take time and money, you got to do the same for the male actor as well. I mean, that's so much time and resources they could have used for something else. Of course, I'm not denying what Magnus and Cecil have done. It's amazing, but if they had focused on a one particular asset and focused on that, they could have done at least a part of their production much better in a way, I would feel. So yeah.
I could see that if they focused all of the they focused all the Ninth Century storyline just using mocap with Cecil, it would have been amazing, and it could have given Magnus a ton more room to work as Harvey in the mythological arc,
Exactly.
and could have added more depth because Cecil as Ava is just perfect. I love her voice
Yeah.
acting; it's just phenomenal, and I cannot imagine Magnus Braun not as Odin. As Odin, he is
Yeah.
amazing. I just love him as
I
Odin.
love him as as Odin, but after hearing oh wait, you're not done yet, so I can't even reach to that fucking point. God damn it. Okay.
I've just finished. I've just finished. Like I'll be honest, I finished 8 anomalies. I got 2 arcs left, and I've completed Asgard and Jotunheim. And I know that Odin, Tyr are all sages. I know this.
Okay.
I
Did
I
you
know.
revisit back Asgard?
I did complete the arc.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. Then I think I can reveal this fact. So, you remember the part where, like, okay, did you complete the main quest, the major main quest of the modern day arc?
No, I've still got Gloucester and Hampshire
Dang
and
it.
Yorkfight
Dang
to
it.
do.
Okay, so I can't say it. So, yeah. I'll leave that for another time.
I already know some stuff. I've got some things worked out. But anyways, let's move on with the retrospective, not a Valhalla
Oh, yeah,
spoilers.
true. My bad, because, it's the recent game. But that's pretty much it that we have, to be fair. Because mainly it's. Oh, wait. Oh, God. The next one.
There's
I
more.
forgot. It's combat. Oh, my God. We have a.
Combat.
Yeah.
Is combat the last one? Because we are nearly an hour
I
in.
know. No, after that is interface and graphics, but I'm pretty sure Ubisoft handles that pretty well. So let's go. Let's go
So
with combat.
combat is the last one.
Yes, combat is lost.
um, woo. Yeah, combat.
Right.
Um, I'm gonna go off the bat and just openly admit that combat has been perfect since Unity and Assassin's Creed One.
Yeah, they did it well, but I think Assassin's Creed 2 took a step back in a sense because you didn't have much of a challenge. Again, it's good for people who didn't prefer combat like me, but in terms of a combat experience, not as much. And you didn't have much of a variety too. Like, not in AC2, to be fair. You didn't have much of a variety later on, mainly. I didn't know why I felt that, mainly because I felt like they were forcing us into such situations. So, yeah, maybe that's why I felt it.
Um, for me, after replaying Assassin's Creed One, I'd say Assassin's Creed One's combat's very
Yeah,
cool. You know, there is a heavy, there's light, you learn counter, but Assassin's Creed Two, Brotherhood, Revelations, Three, and Black Flag and Rogue, even though there's certain enemies that I have to be a bit more tactical with, it was literally a two-button
yeah.
combat
It
system.
was way too
You
easy.
could
Way too easy.
murder 100 guards just pressing counter and kill. It was just literally and I kind of preferred Unities where I had to like dodge a
Exactly.
little. There was a bit of a parry, but at the same time, the way the character models moved and the way the animations worked, it did feel more realistic for their time. So, um, Unities Arno does a lot of fencing type
Yeah,
poses, which is very common for the French era. So I do think that's really a good touch. You know, he's got the very repose and different kind of.
yeah.
It's bad that I know some fencing words, but
That's good.
it
See,
does
that's the
come off
thing.
knowing
That's the
that.
thing. So, what Valhalla should have done is focus on that combat style and promoted that. For example, Vikings were known to be very good at wrestling or glimmer. That's their sport. And if they had focused more on combat glimmer, or what Vikings used at the time, I think we would have seen a much different approach towards the combat, where you would have grapplings, disarms, and stuff like that. It would have been such a different experience, but it felt very samey to what other RPG ARPG games have done so far. And yeah, they should have also introduced that touch of originality for that era.
But I think one props I will give them, and I am going to get so much flack for this because I know there's a huge community out there that disagrees with me, is the weapon choices they used. I'm not going to talk about dual wielding because I've not used it and I don't really like it as much. But with the way the gear system works, playing the game with just bearded axes is technically historically accurate in a way because Vikings did use axes as a really good way of tools and they were efficient combat. Them using CX type daggers is very reminiscent of the time period. They did have swords, and that's a very touchy subject, but swords weren't handed out to
Yeah,
everyone. They were like a statement, like you were really well. And a lot of people will say, well, why can't you just pick up swords in Valhalla? But if you want to keep this historical approach, then
but that's the
having
thing.
a
They
gear
could have
system,
actually done that, but I don't know why they have chosen not to take in it in that approach. But
well,
yeah, I see where you're going through with that. It in historical accuracy, they didn't have swords mainly because they didn't have much of iron during the time. So a sax is what they used more often because sax is a close range weapon and it is also what you use for as a sort of like a daily knife situation. It's something like your axe. A sax is what you use also for your daily objectives. For example, for cutting in meat or skinning animals, that's what you use. But the way how Valhalla did it so far is that your axe is used for almost everything and nothing at the same time. Like for example, the axe that's always there with Eivor, you only use that for making double assassinations or for giving
huh?
the chain assassinations. I mean,
Oh, I was going to say there's double assassinations. How? When? They need this. They've been demanding double assassinations for ages. What? What?
chain assassinations. My bad. So you always have the backhand axe all the time. That is for the for the chain assassination. So this is something that Assassin's Creed needs to heavily focus on is how to implement three systems that works very well regardless of what you do. At this time with Valhalla, your stealth is broken. Your range is pretty good. That is the hunter. Combat is also pretty good, but it could use a little bit of a polish.
Um, One thing I will touch on briefly about the swords is one is my own theory, and one is I heard on Twitter but cannot find the source, so I do apologize, people. Apparently, they did have swords in the first ever demo when they were testing it, but then they realized the sword animations for
Hello.
single swords was just too samey to
Hmm.
axes. So it was kind of like, do you put swords in and have no unique gameplay effect to them, and then people just complain that they're just as same as an axe, or do you just take them out? And my point of a point is kind of a daft theory, but putting swords into Assassin's Creed Valhalla would just create the most typical RPG sword and bard type gameplay of sword and
It
shield.
could, yeah.
It's the most typical out there, and to be honest, running around Assassin's Creed Valhalla with sword and bard just reminisces of any RPG game out there with sword and shield. Isn't There's nothing unique to it, but which is why I don't really use shields as much because it doesn't feel unique. I don't expect Eivor to be running around with a big
But
shield and big
for their
sword.
time period, using like if you see how their combat system works, the reason why they use sacks or axes is because it's good at close range. Now, if you use something longer, you wouldn't use a long sword or a spear or a Dane axe. You would actually use a sword because it's a good mid range weapon. And they could have focused on that, but the problem is with Valhalla, you have only two situations. You have short range and long range. There is no in between combat. You only have mid in between combat when you are in raids, but that's pretty much it. And this is where Valhalla needs should have focused a bit on the locality and the area because Sax works well on close range. It's like your dagger. It works well in close range. Your poles is a long range weapon. This is what they usually use to keep people out and is somewhat similar for them to handle as well. And they had two types of spears as well. They have the one handed spear and two handed spear. They could have developed on it. But seeing how the similarities would be, I can see why they have taken it out of the game and see how it pushed forward.
I I kind of prefer not having the sword, and this is I know a lot of people want the sword, but I just feel whenever you play an RPG and open it, there's always going to be a sword there. It's rare to see daggers and axes. I know daggers and axes are in a lot of RPGs, but I don't know any RPGs by heart that uses small beard type axes that it is in Valhalla. And I do play a lot of rogue gameplay where I'm actually two daggers and a bow, so CXs and a hunter's bow is perfect for me as A4.
Yeah, it's perfect. But that's the thing. But with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, problem was they have short range weapons, but the problem is they made it too big. Like the enemy spacing is way too big for that. It needs to be very, very much close range for sacks to work or your axes to work. Um, and they could have focused more on the placement of the enemies in that situation. Again, it comes in level design and everything, which is Assassin's Creed's main area to focus on. It is not an RPG characteristic, but it is something that they need to focus on and push forward.
There is, and I can't believe I'm actually going to be saying this because it's so hypocritical of me. There is one combat thing that I actually think Assassin's Creed Valhalla should have, and they didn't have, and that's when you use unarmed, because of how you can use left and right. I wish they actually used the hidden blade as
Uh
combat.
huh.
And I know I've complained in the
You
past that
do.
hidden
You
blade
do
shouldn't be
use
used in
it in
combat.
combat, but it's sort of like a heavy weapon attack.
Yeah, and I don't. That's what my whole thing is with it. I just wish, like, I've never liked it in the old games where you used to block every blow with it and then use it as
Yeah.
counter. I didn't think that was counterintuitive, but the way hack and slash works, I could see it as more jab, jab.
Mm,
Third
yeah.
combo is a punch to the face, and you retract the hidden blade. That to me could physically work, but standing in a crowd and holding your hands up every 2 minutes to block an axe, a spear, and a sword, and then use hidden blade doesn't scream like something anyone could do with the
Yeah.
reaction time. But seeing someone use proper brawler type action like Syndicate did,
Yeah, but
I could
thing
see
is,
a hidden blade
what I could
working.
also see happening is that if Eivor constantly used the hidden blade just for combat, it would break off. Like it would chip off at least the blade.
Yeah. So I could see. I just think like it would just be so fun just to two
You
jabs
know what
and
would be
then
cool?
I
Instead of stump, Eivor used the blade to make ground assassinations, like ground executions with the blade.
that would that would have been cool actually. Just push them down and stab.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we can't. But the hidden blade's back. That's all we can complain about. It's perfect.
It's not perfect. I played stealth. You know what type of stealth I play.
I've played that much stealth with the hidden blade that I have, and I'm loading up my Uplay stats. 758 total assassinations.
And that is not good because I have got more kills on combat rather than on stealth, which is bad. And I'm a stealth player. So, yeah.
I don't even. I don't even. Oh, apparently I've got 3,830 kills. But I use a bow quite a lot. So total assassination 758. I only use my CXs in raids and when I really mess up my positioning, which is quite a lot. But for Assassin's Creed Stealth to work, the biggest problem is the range on archers. You get rid of archers, you get rid of chickens, you're totally fine.
Also,
And yes, I said
in
chickens.
approaching with the nightmares, please. The as approaching with the combat, let's talk about level scaling because apparently there's a misconception with people saying that level scaling is part of every RPG, which is technically not true. You have enemies which have a particular set of health pool, and you go beat them, but they technically need not have to be level scaled to your level as part of an RPG characteristic. It's something that the developers use to build it up. But do you think level scaling should be there?
Um, if I'm all honest, I have no clue. In truthfulness, I didn't know level scaling was an option till I went back to Origins to do the Platinum Trophy run when people said, oh, yes, you can match it. So every enemy is your level. So if you
I
are
think you must have
level,
faced it during Odyssey because you would always get enemies 4 levels below you or bosses at your level. And whatever happens is that, like, what happened was that your balance got changed so much to the point where even if you're level 88, your enemies are also 88, and they have this massive health pool to complement it.
I, to be honest, I've never seen it as an issue. Like I've seen so many people, friends on PlayStation groups complain to me like, "Oh my god, forced level scaling in Valhalla, it's bad." And
It is there.
I've
Level scaling is there, but it's not as um, visible because even if you get level scaling, I don't see. Yeah, you do have moments where, like for example, your boss battles, right? Those boss battles right now would be scaled to your level. Before it was not. Say for example, you have the Lyrian Sisters quest. Before
yeah,
the patch, I made the this one was 270 or something that I need to beat. I made sure I was about 350 before I took her on. Now, if I replayed the entire game and if I meet the Lyrian sisters and with the same 350 level, she would be the same level as I am. But if I turn down my level to say 10 because it's possible with Valhalla, she would maintain at 270. So there was no point of me leveling up in that sense. So
see, to be honest, as I've said to people who've complained about it to me in the past, I refuse to comment too much on it because one, I don't understand it, and two, I am on the normal difficulty, Drenga, and Master Assassin for
mhm,
stealth, and since the patch, I've beaten the first Daughter of Lyrion in the first area of the game.
mhm.
I've beaten Fenrir the Wolf. I've beaten the Strenger boss
Exact.
in Jotunheim,
The thing is,
and I've had no
I think
issues.
for your case is what happened is that when you are fighting with the bosses, they were scaled already for you. But for a player like me who have not seen that scaling before, suddenly introduce that scaling, it obviously changed the experience entirely. So yeah.
But but the problem I was explaining to a lot of people is I see why people are complaining and all that, but the difficulty I faced in them bosses felt to me the same difficulty I faced when I fought the first what they called? You know the ones that served um
Zealots.
the guy who got no, not the zealots. It's the first one in Norway. It's
Oh,
like a hidden Drenker or something.
oh yeah, yeah, the Drengers. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes, I fought the first Drenker in Norway, and I fought the For the Fisherman before the
Mm-hmm.
patch. And after the patch, I then went to fight the Daughter of Lyrion and every other boss. And in my personal gameplay feeling, the boss battles don't feel any different. And bearing in mind, I was 10 levels under for the Fisherman, and I was 5 levels under
Yeah.
for
See, if
the
you're under,
Drenker
it's
in.
fine. If you over level, that is a situation. So, say, usually when people tend to over level, is to make sure their combat experience is much more smoother. But Valhalla introduced a new patch where even if you over level, enemies would scale immediately towards your level. So basically, it means that regardless of what you do, you're going to spend much more time in killing that enemy. So there was this test done by JB where he did this fight with a bull, and he in his pre-run, that is pre-patch, he finished it within 4 minutes. But after patch, it scaled up and it took about 5 minutes more. So that is something that also there's this issue with microtransactions that Ubisoft have, and that's a whole different topic. So let's leave that for another day.
Well, like I said, maybe it's me because I did the Jotunheim arc last week, and I think I'm about 20, 40 levels above the Jotunheim arc
Hmm.
requirements. And the big giant Strenger boss, I forgot his name, literally took me 3 minutes to complete.
Yeah,
I really didn't feel there was any issue. I think the only issue I noticed was just the way the boss mechanics worked. I had to stay by the fires, but it was just really easy to hit his critical spots and just take it out. The only one that took a lot longer was because I had no arrows,
yeah,
and I really hate how the boss mechanic works. It was just Fenrir. Fenrir had a weird camera angle
yeah,
glitch that took a lot longer to
yeah.
beat. But the boss battles, even though I'm a really high level for Jotunheim, in my opinion, didn't feel any longer than it would have when I was fighting the Drenga that were lower than me. So maybe it's just me.
That's
I
the
just
thing.
don't
That's the thing.
feel there's any
The thing is,
difference.
if you're under leveled or if you're the same level, you wouldn't face it at much. But if you're over leveled and then you try it again, it changes because for me, the Daughter of Lyrian, I over leveled myself for at least 50 levels above, and I finished within 2 minutes. And when I did a replay through again, um, I took way longer than expected, which is not a good experience in my case because it is a sort of like a feeling for me where I spend so much time in the game and it is not rewarding me back. That was the sort of a feeling that I got.
And like I said, I can't offer too much
Yeah.
of a like if it's a good or bad because I just personally feel the boss battles I've fought past the past the past the update have all had that green diamond on the head. That means I'm overpowered or on levels. It's usually when I'm overpowered because I can assassinate the one normal people one shot. Have not felt like they've been a chore because I got too much of a health patch. They just all felt literally too easy.
Hmm.
And if that's because the level scaling to me has made them too easy, but I know I was over level with the Jotunheim bosses and just felt too simple to beat.
I no,
I
they're
just
all the
wish they were a bit
same. They'll
harder.
be at the same level for you, regardless of what you do now. It's only for those who had the issue pre-patch and are playing it now. So that's only the problem. They wouldn't face it otherwise because it would be a normal gameplay system for them. So yeah.
I just think this whole patch system would have been a lot worse if there was a lot more bosses. There's
Hmm.
not that many bosses. I think there's tons of bosses. I think this could have been an issue for
Yeah,
everyone.
I mean, it would have been nightmarish because that means like even if you over level about these zealots, the zealots will level up with you too. So which is bad.
Zealots have always been bad, even before
Yeah,
patch.
but the thing is, I when I over leveled, I had some level 90 zealots, which I could almost one shot them because they were quite easy to counter now, and now not so anymore because now it'll take much. They will not react as fast as me, but it takes much more time now because of their larger health pool and stuff like that.
Well, when I run to a zealot next time, I'm running away. I think that's all we've got time for tonight.
Oh wow, we reached towards the end.
Yes, we are on an hour 31, the
Wow.
longest episode in history,
Oof.
and it's going to be the most hardest to edit because of the annoying audio issue at the start. So I apologize, people.
I'm
I'll
sorry as
fix it.
well for making this topic last for too long and we reached towards Valhalla spoiler cast halfway through, and I'm sorry for that.
I just think the biggest takeaway of this is that no matter what Assassin's Creed does, it can learn a lot from the past
Yeah,
games, but the market for gaming is just literally impossible to please everyone in,
yeah,
and it's impossible to get an RPG perfect because not everyone will have the perfect system. Some will say to me, "I want Odyssey's inventory management back because I love spending hours making builds." Where I'm like, well, I want a short one because I want more time killing Templars. So you can't always win, but think we have discussed some stuff they can do to make the game a bit
Better.
easier going forward.
For example, our new skill obtaining mechanisms. Please hire us, pay us money, royalty, anything's fine. Just make it better.
I'm in trouble. You can't even make royalty on a podcast. It's impossible.
No, I know. That sucks. But at least we could hope.
Ubisoft, hire me.
Yeah.
So, I think this is all we do have time for, but if you guys have any ideas of what you think, please don't be afraid to shout out. On Twitter, you can find me at 8C Let's Talk, and you can find Ikraik
at Ikraik _ original. Of course, links would be provided in the description as always, so you can reach out to me there.
Well,
And if you have any issues of what I said, you can reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk it out with you.
don't do it. It's a trap.
It's a bait.
It
That's a bait.
It's bait. But thank you everyone for listening, and I hope to hear anyone's points of views. Remember, my emails are always open. My email is assassinscreedletstalk@gmail.com. Please slide me an email if you have any questions, or if you want to be a guest on the show. Everyone is welcome.
Also, sliding into DMs are not appreciated.
Oh, I don't mind. My Twitter DMs are open if you just want to.
Oh,
slide
same
in
here. I
and
just
message me,
wanted to
I'm
say that. I
fine.
just had that opportunity to say it. So, yep.
No, nobody slides into my DMs. I'm too boring.
Oh, wow. That's a good ending
Wow.
to a podcast.
I like listening to this guy, but he's so boring to talk to outside a podcast. Let's not slide into his DMs. Yeah, that's a unique one. So, thank you all for listening, and I do have gone slightly off track, but I need to go finish my cup of tea, so I will catch you all next week.
Goodbye.